talking about autism levels. So the other article I wanted to mention was one by Professor Tony Atwood. He's like one of the biggies in autism, like he's one of the top researchers. He's written quite a number of books, and he also diagnoses people as well. So he talks about how the DSM, the latest edition, has the emphasis is on autism being a spectrum rather than there being discrete categories as there used to be. So now we have autism spectrum disorder. To try to capture this spectrum, they delineated levels of autism rather than categories of autism. He said, although the problem with only considering levels is that levels are linear, implying mild, moderate and severe autism, whereas the spectrum is multidimensional. So it's a little bit ironic in a way, in that they've got rid of categories and they've tried to replace it with a spectrum, and yet by introducing levels, in a sense they have introduced some degree of categorisation, something rather linear and fixed. So it's not really clear to what extent the levels are any better than the old ideas of Asperger's syndrome and all those other separate categories, because levels by nature are categorical, right? So it's a bit strange, really. It doesn't sit within the whole spectrum idea. Personally, I do think it was a kind of a mistake them getting rid of Asperger's and all those other types of autism. I do think that was a bit of a mistake. Yes, I know there were problems with them. I know they weren't watertight. I know it wasn't always clear who sat in which category and so on and so on. But I don't think getting rid of them, replacing them with the spectrum approach with these levels has really resolved any of the problems. Really, it's just introduced new problems. He says that there is a potential for levels to minimise the distress experienced when an individual has a lower level of autism than level 3. So I mean, like say if someone's, has level 1 autism, so their autism is said to be very mild, that might make them feel like their problems are being trivialised or whatever. So there is problems with that, associated with that. But he says that the DSM gets around this problem by emphasising that the levels indicate levels of support needs, not just the severity of autism. So in other words, someone's autism might not be... So put it this way, someone's autism itself might not be particularly severe, but they still might have quite a high level because of the amount of support they need. So the levels isn't really just about the severity of autism. Yes, there can be a correlation between severity of autism and support needed, but not always. It's not like a binary. Someone's autism might be very severe, and yet their support needs might not actually be as great. So they might actually have a lower level. So someone in theory could be level 1 and still be quite severely autistic, but for whatever reason they don't need that much support. Maybe because they don't have that many other kind of comorbidities, which I'll come on to in a moment. Someone else could be level 3, their autism might be actually quite mild, but they might have a severe learning disability or something like that. Intellectual disability is known in America. And therefore, they're level 3, even though their actual autism is pretty mild, but because they have all of these comorbidities, they need a hell of a lot of support, which is why they're in level 3. So autism levels isn't just assessing the severity of autism in and of itself, it's also taking into account how autism interacts with these other comorbidities. So it's looking at support needs, basically. And our other specifiers are needed to fully understand the person's presentation of autism. For example, whether the person has another condition or not. Because autism is recognised to rarely occur in its pure form. As I have mentioned before, the NDM neurodiversity movement love to go on about, oh, it's comorbidities, it's not autism, and yet when you look at it, how many people just have autism on its own? Yeah, there will be some, but they're very, very much a minority. Autism nearly always has fellow passengers, which suggests some sort of neurological linkage in the brain. Yes, these are separate conditions. Of course, the brain doesn't demarcate into separate conditions. I would say actually, having the more conditions you have is a greater sign of brain abnormality. We label them as different conditions, but ultimately, the brain doesn't demarcate, does it? And obviously, the more conditions you have, the more support needs you're going to have, quite obviously, because the more disabled you're going to be, obviously. So autism is recognised already occur in its pure form, and that having specified what other conditions are present, Okay, that's important. The diagnostician is required to specify the level of support required Yes, the diagnostician is required to specify the levels of support required for each of the two major components of autism, so social communication and restrictive repetitive behaviours. But part of the impact can be due to having autism plus. Autism plus means meeting a criteria for autism, but also meeting a criteria for another condition, for example, OCD, depression, ADHD, and things like that. I have autism plus because I've got really severe OCD. And as I've talked about in my other videos, this is basically really connected to my autism and my fear of change and like not being able to deal with any deviation to my routine. I've got severe I can't say that word. Severe RRBs, repetitive rigid behaviours. Like I need to go to bed at exactly the same time. I can't deviate. And basically, yeah, a lot of my OCD is connected to that as well. So there's a lot of interaction between my OCD and autism. If a person has autism plus and another condition, the result will usually be, but not always, but usually will include increased autistic signs. So he's basically saying, yeah, if you have autism plus, you will nearly always basically present with more autistic signs. I guess again, it's a bit like me with my OCD. That means I'm more rigid. So obviously the autism sign of needing routine, obviously a lot of that is connected to my autism, but because I've also got OCD and a lot of anxiety. And remember when I did another video on autism-specific anxiety, and they said this could actually be a thing, and it might actually be a very particular type of autism where the anxiety is heavily driven by the fear of routine. And I said how much I related to that, and yeah, I do feel this could be an actual thing, awaiting further research. So obviously if you have autism plus, you're obviously going to be present as more autistic. I guess it's a bit like, say, someone with autism level 3 who has a really severe intellectual disability and can't talk. Some of that might not be autism, admittedly. They might have a severe speech and language disorder on top of their autism, but obviously, as we know, autism pretty much hardly ever occurs on its own anyway, so in some respects it's kind of not really relevant whether or not it's autism or not. The fact is, this person has autism plus and they're severely autistic because although if you take the autism features in and of themselves, if they didn't occur with the language disability and the intellectual impairment might not be so bad, the fact is this person has these other comorbidities on top. That means they're going to be, and the result will basically be profound autism for them, so they'll be in level 3. Whereas for me, I don't have, I've got good language and stuff, but I have severe OCD. That's obviously going to push me up higher, so I'm obviously more like level 2 as opposed to level 1 because I can't work and stuff. So as he says, increased impairment, obviously, if you have another condition, obviously. And across more contexts, there'll be more impairment across more contexts, for example, homeschool and leisure, work, etc. So having autism plus other problems usually means that the level of autism is greater. Yeah, I'm definitely, level 2. I think at the groups I attend, most of the people there, particularly the women's group I attend, pretty much everyone there is level 1. Like, a lot of them seem to have good jobs, kind of like families and stuff like that. I do know a few people who are more level 2. At the other group I go to, I know one individual who's got very severe ADHD, so I think she was probably diagnosed, she would have been diagnosed before the levels came to existence, but I would say, bearing in mind the levels are based upon how much support someone needs, which is pretty obvious really. She needs like daily support from her mum, so I would say she's level 2. And so I know a few others who are level 2, I do know a few others. And she can't work either, so. But her additional problems are caused by her ADHD, so she's autism plus as well, but in a different way. So as it says here, ASD level 3 is usually classic autism. So ASD level 3 without language or intellectual impairment. So, sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. Try and make this more clear. So sorry, go back a bit. So what Tony Atwood is saying is that most people in ASD level 3 would have previously been said to have classic autism. They're like at the most severe, because level 3 is like the severest level, level 2 is in the middle, level 1 is the mildest. But it is possible to be ASD level 3 without a language or intellectual impairment. So in theory, it's possible for someone to be level 3 with normal language and normal IQ, but they might have very severe ADHD, they might have severe depression, and therefore they will also have very, very substantial support needs and a limited prognosis. They may speak in full sentences and even have a university degree, but are so hampered by their autism due to additional diagnoses that they are unable to perform even simplest of self-care tasks. So in theory, it is possible for someone previously diagnosed with Asperger's to be in level 3 if they have autism plus, and basically, I guess they would be even more severe than I am. Like, they wouldn't even be able to cook for themselves. At least I could cook, but like I said, that's my special interest. That's like my splinter skill, because I'm interested in cooking. I've perfected it as an art form. But most people in level 3 will be what used to be said to be classic autism. So the vast majority won't be able to talk, but obviously there are exceptions. Some might be able to talk really well, because it doesn't just look at your social skills. Social skills is one part of it. It also looks at like how autism hampers your life in other areas, such as like how the repetitive behaviours impact on your ability to do self-care and other things. So it's kind of meant to be quite holistic. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to my talk about levels. Like I said, I've never got an official level because I was diagnosed before levels became a thing. Not everyone, but obviously, I need substantial support. I don't just need a little bit of support, I need substantial support. How can I say, it is exceedingly likely that I would be level 2. I mean, it would be weird not to be level 2 because I don't just need a little bit of support, I need substantial support, so yeah, I must be level 2 because, level 2 makes sense for me. But like I said, I would quite like to actually get an official level, because I'm someone who likes officialdom. I don't like just saying I'm something, I don't know whether that's the same, borderline dodgy territory, I don't know, because I don't like self-diagnosis and stuff. I think it's a bit different to self-diagnosis in a sense, though. It's more pointing to your support needs, which are more concrete, and obviously I do have substantial support needs, because I get support from the autism charity, and before COVID I was getting support practically every day, and obviously people in level 2 have daily support needs, so that would obviously correlate with that very strongly. And obviously now my dad does support, he does all my shopping for me and everything, so that's a substantial support need. But I would quite like it officially written down, but obviously because I was assessed before, I would quite like to be able to actually be properly assessed for a level, because and just to be able to talk it through really with like someone in the know, because I like officialdom and I like to have things like official. But like I said, I was diagnosed before the levels came a thing, and I don't know whether I have the luxury of ever getting it officially written down or anything. I guess the other way of saying it is that I basically or I could just simply ignore the whole level thing and just simply say I have substantial support needs, because that is true, I do have substantial support needs. But let me know what you think about these